Hello everyone! Today, we're diving into an incredible project, a wooden house built on a small hillside. He starts by grabbing a shovel and digging into the hillside to level the ground. Since the slope is inclined, he digs deeper into the hill, approximately knee-deep, to make the ground level with the outer side. Next, he takes large wooden posts, sharpened at one end, and drives them into the ground around the leveled area to form the house's foundation. Using a sledgehammer, he carefully pounds these sturdy posts into place. He continues to drive more foundation posts into the ground, carefully spacing them around the perimeter of the house frame. Each post is securely embedded into the soil, ensuring they can support the structure's weight. After completing the outer post, he shifts his focus to the interior of the frame. With precision, he installs additional posts in the center, strategically placed to enhance the overall stability and durability of the foundation. After that, he saws additional wooden beams and places them along the perimeter of the foundation. Each beam is carefully measured and positioned to fit securely on top of the foundation posts. To ensure a precise connection, he carves grooves into the ends of the beams, allowing them to interlock seamlessly with one another. Once the perimeter frame is firmly in place, he begins laying horizontal wooden beams across the frame. These beams are evenly spaced and meticulously secured, forming the framework for the house's floor. This step not only provides a strong and level base for the flooring, but also showcases his craftsmanship and attention to detail as he ensures every piece fits perfectly. Next, he begins nailing the wooden beams into place, securing them firmly to the foundation. As he works, the structure starts to take shape, with the raised floor frame standing about knee-high off the ground. Next, he brings wooden planks to the floor frame and carefully places them on top. One by one, he secures each plank with nails, ensuring they are tightly fastened. Once in place, he uses a saw to trim any excess wood, leaving a smooth, even surface. He continues this process, moving from one section of the floor frame to the next, laying the planks, nailing them down, and cutting away the overhang wood until the entire floor surface is complete. On the side of the floor near the wall, he leaves a square opening in the center. He saws additional wooden beams and begins laying them down on the floor, starting from the square opening. These beams are arranged to form a hexagonal border around the perimeter of the house. Each piece is carefully measured and positioned, ensuring the edges align perfectly. This hexagonal shape will give the house a unique and structured design, setting the stage for the next steps in the building process. After that, he brings more wooden beams to the floor frame. Next, he saws more wooden beams and carefully carves grooves at the ends of each piece to ensure they fit together seamlessly. Once ready, he places the beams vertically at each of the four corners of the house's frame, forming the main structural post that will support the entire structure. After setting up the vertical post, he moves on to constructing a simple yet effective wooden ladder. Using the ladder, he climbs up and begins securing horizontal beams across the tops of the vertical posts. These beams form the upper framework of the house, acting as rafters that will support the roof. To further reinforce the frame, he adds diagonal wooden beams, connecting the vertical posts. These cross braces are essential for strengthening the entire structure, providing added support to withstand forces from wind or movement. The addition of these diagonal beams not only stabilizes the frame, but also contributes to the overall sturdiness and durability of the house. Next, He brings several stones and begins filling the square opening, stacking them carefully from the ground up to the floor level. After that, he takes sand and fills in the spaces around the stones, spreading it evenly to create a smooth surface on top of the stones. He mixes a bucket of sand with cement and water, carefully stirring the ingredients together to form a thick, uniform paste. Next, he begins constructing the stove. He starts by spreading cement evenly along the edges of the square opening, carefully creating a smooth and level surface. Then, he begins stacking stones on top of the cement, creating the foundation for the stove. The stones are placed with precision, each one fitting snugly against the next, and the cement is used to hold them securely in place. Layer by layer, he continues building the stone base, gradually shaping the stove's foundation. As the stone layers rise to about the height of his hand, he prepares to reinforce the structure. He places a large metal grate horizontally across the top of the stone base, ensuring it is positioned securely. On top of the grate, he applies a thick layer of cement, smoothing it out evenly to create the cooking surface of the stove. Once the walls reach the desired height, he prepares to form the dome-like structure of the stove. He places a curved metal frame across the top of the stone walls, shaping it to fit the stove's design. The frame is carefully adjusted, ensuring that it will support the weight of the stones that will be placed on top. He then proceeds to stack more stones around the frame, gradually building them up and securing them with cement. Layer by layer, the stone walls rise higher, eventually reaching waist height. Then, starting from the top of the stove, he begins stacking stones in a circular pattern, gradually building them upward to form the chimney. Each stone is placed carefully, following the curve to ensure the chimney takes shape. When the stone chimney reaches about shoulder height, he places a metal pipe at the top of the circular frame, securing it in place. The metal pipe will serve as the flue for the stove, allowing smoke to exit safely. He builds a small fire in the stove, carefully adding wood and kindling to ignite the flames. Next, he takes additional wooden beams and saws them into shorter, more manageable pieces. With these shorter beams, he begins assembling a frame structure, carefully aligning the pieces to form triangular frames that will support the roof. Once the frames are ready, he begins attaching them to the roof frame. He places the frames at evenly spaced intervals, ensuring that the structure remains balanced. He continues to saw more wooden beams, preparing additional pieces for the roof structure. Once ready, he brings them up to the roof frame and begins positioning them carefully. Starting from the top of the front of frame, he places the beams at a slight angle, extending them toward the outer edges of the hexagonal frame. These angled beams form the front portion of the roof, creating a slanted, triangular shape that slopes downward. Afterward, he spreads a layer of fabric over the entire roof frame, carefully smoothing it out to cover the entire structure. The fabric will serve as an additional layer of protection, helping to shield the interior from the elements. He ensures that the fabric is evenly distributed, with no wrinkles or gaps. To secure the fabric in place, he takes additional wooden beams and places them along the edges of the fabric. These wooden strips are fastened tightly over the fabric, attaching it firmly to the roof frame. He begins by painting the wooden planks black, giving them a sleek and durable finish that will help protect the roof from the elements. Once the paint is dry, he carefully arranges the black planks along the roof frame. He starts at the lower edge of the frame, placing the first planks horizontally and securing them in place. Gradually, he works his way up, laying down additional planks, one after another, and securing them with nails to form the roof. As he completes the shaped sections, he moves on to the slanted sections at the front of the roof. Again, starting at the bottom edge, he lays the planks across, securing each one as he moves upward, layer by layer, until he reaches the peak of the roof. This careful process continues, with each plank being placed precisely and securely, building up the roof structure. Once the roof is complete, he uses a saw to trim off any excess planks that extend beyond the edges. With the excess wood removed, he carefully sweeps away any debris, such as leaves or sawdust, from the surface of the roof. Next, he spreads waterproof black fabric over the joints where the two roof planks meet, ensuring that all the seams are covered and protected from moisture. Using a stapler gun, he secures the fabric to the roof, fastening it tightly to the planks to ensure it stays in place. He works his way along the roof, starting from the slanted rear section, carefully positioning the fabric to cover the entire joint. Next, he takes a large piece of fabric and drapes it around the entire frame of the house, ensuring it covers all the walls. The fabric serves as an additional layer of protection. Using a power drill, he drives screws into the frame to secure the fabric firmly in place. Afterward, he measures and cuts small wooden pieces, each about 10 centimeters in length. He then carefully saws each piece at both ends, creating angle cuts that form a slanted edge. Once the cuts are made, he begins assembling the pieces into small hexagonal shapes. He takes 6 of these angle pieces and arranges them to form the first hexagon, carefully aligning the edges to ensure a perfect fit. With the first hexagonal frame complete, he continues making more by repeating the process. Afterward, he takes the hexagonal frames and begins placing them on the exterior walls of the house. Starting at the lower edge of one side of the wall, he arranges the first hexagon and then carefully stacks the next one on top. Using a power drill, he secures each hexagonal piece with screws, fastening them tightly to the wall to ensure they stay in place. He continues this process all the way to the top of the wall. Next, he assembles even more hexagonal frames, carefully crafting each one with precision. Once they are ready, he begins attaching them to the remaining walls of the house. Starting with one of the uncompleted walls, he repeats the process of stacking the hexagonal frames, just as he did with the first wall. He places the first hexagon at the bottom edge, then continues adding each one on top of the previous, working his way upward. Afterward, he places one hexagonal frame onto a piece of foam board. He then carefully cuts the foam into hexagonal shapes, matching the dimensions of the wooden frames. Once he has enough foam pieces prepared, he begins placing them into the hexagonal frames attached to the walls. Starting with one side of the wall, he works his way from the bottom up, carefully fitting each foam piece into its corresponding hexagon. Once the first wall is completely covered with foam, he moves on to the next wall. He continues the process of placing the foam into each hexagonal frame, working methodically across the entire wall. He leaves several hexagonal spaces open in the middle of the wall, deliberately leaving them without foam. He steps inside the house and cuts fabric to fit the vacant hexagonal frames. He gathers a small pile of wood and places it inside the stove. Afterward, he prepares small stones and begins placing them into the gap between the chimney and the two walls. Carefully, he arranges the stones, making sure they fit snugly into the space. Once the stones are in place, he uses cement to secure them, ensuring that they stay firmly in position. He takes some cement and begins applying it over the foam pieces inside the hexagonal frames on the walls. Using a trowel, he spreads the cement evenly across each foam section, ensuring that it covers the entire surface. He takes several wooden pieces and begins carefully arranging them to form a large half-hexagon shape. Once the pieces are properly aligned, he secures the half-hexagon firmly to the side of the walkway that leads up to the raised floor of the house. This half-hexagon creates the first step in his staircase design. After ensuring it is securely attached and level, he constructs a smaller half-hexagon in the same way, carefully measuring and cutting the wood to fit perfectly on top of the larger one. Next, he repeats the process on the opposite side of the floor. On this side, he constructs another set of stairs using the same method. The same large half-hexagon is placed first, followed by a smaller half-hexagon placed on top to create 2 additional steps. Next, he takes several more wooden pieces and begins cutting them to the proper length. He arranges them horizontally and secures them into the frame in front of the floor, raising them to knee height to create the base of a railing. Once the base is secure, he begins placing vertical wooden pieces at regular intervals within the frame. These vertical pieces are carefully spaced to create neat rectangular openings between them. The railings on both the floor and the stairs now provide safety, support, and a polished, finished look to the house. He carefully arranges the small hexagonal pieces into 3 rows, forming a rectangular frame. Using screws, he secures the pieces together, ensuring they are tightly fixed in place. This creates a sturdy frame, which he then affixes to the door frame, completing the main door of the house. With the main door completed, he moves on to the windows. For the window frames, he uses hexagonal glass panes, carefully placing each one into the hexagonal openings of the window frames. He begins by applying a coat of paint to the walls surrounding the house, giving them a fresh, uniform look. The paint adds a protective layer and enhances the overall appearance of the structure, blending seamlessly with the natural materials used throughout the house. He carefully paints a rich brown color onto several of the hexagonal panels, strategically choosing sections to highlight. This creates a striking contrast against the rest of the walls, mimicking the appearance of a beehive with its geometric, honeycomb pattern. He then takes a black paint and applies it to all the wooden pieces around the perimeter of the house's foundation. The dark color contrasts nicely with the natural tones of the wood, adding a sleek and modern touch to the structure. Once the painting is complete, he uses a hoe to level the ground around the stairs. He prepares several wooden planks, carefully gathering them and bringing them to the floor of the house. Once in place, he begins cutting the planks into shorter pieces, ensuring each one is the right size to fit the ceiling. Next, he starts arranging the cut wooden planks on the ceiling, laying them down carefully to form the ceiling surface. The planks fit together tightly, covering the entire roof area, creating a solid, smooth surface. Once the wooden planks are securely in place, he lays a layer of foam on top of the planks. He continues by cutting more pieces of wood, preparing them for the next part of the house. Once the pieces are prepared, he begins to arrange them vertically along the wall near the kitchen, using them to build an interior partition. Each wooden plank is meticulously placed, ensuring that the gaps between them are even. The wooden planks are spaced evenly and securely fixed to the frame, forming a sturdy and solid wall. Next, he moves on to constructing the bed frame. He assembles the wooden frame with precision, ensuring that all the pieces are level and stable. Once the frame is complete, he adds wooden slats across the top to form the surface of the bed. With the bed finished, he shifts focus to building a chair. He begins by creating a frame for the chair, ensuring it is the same height as the bed to maintain uniformity in the room's furniture. He assembles the wooden pieces carefully, making sure the frame is stable and secure. Finally, he decides to build a small wooden table. He starts by constructing the frame at waist height. The frame is built with care, and once it's complete, he arranges wooden planks on top to form the table's surface. Next, he decides to build a small 3-shelf storage unit above the stove. He carefully measures and cuts the pieces of wood to create the frame for the shelves. Once the shelf is in place, he gathers some firewood and carefully arranges it in the stove. He unrolls a soft mattress and places it on the bed frame. After completing the setup inside the house, he lights 2 oil lamps, placing one on the small table and the other on the shelf above the stove. Next, he takes a piece of meat to roast it over the fire in the stove. Once the meat is done, he removes it from the skewer and cuts it into small, bite-sized pieces. He places the meat into the hollowed-out pumpkin. To enhance the dish, he chops an assortment of fresh vegetables, carrots, potatoes, and onions and adds them to the pumpkin, creating a hearty, colorful meal. When the meal is ready, he takes it off the heat and sets it on the table. Sitting comfortably on the chair he built, he enjoys his delicious homemade meal in the warmth of his cozy wooden house, savoring every bite in the peaceful ambience of his creation.